In a world where, for many, access to clean, safe water is taken for granted, the reality is that almost a third of the people on Earth live without any access to safe running water, and around 2.5 billion people lack even basic sanitation facilities. Despite being an essential requirement for all life, historically, water has received the lowest amount of investment compared to other key infrastructure sectors. $114 billion a year is required to meet the Sustainable Development Goals targets, 3 times what is currently invested. These acute water inequality challenges are exacerbated by increasing environmental pollution. 5 years ago, around 5 trillion pieces of plastic polluted the world's oceans. Today, that figure is 10 times higher. 70% of the 300 million tons of potentially recyclable plastic produced each year ends up being incinerated, in landfill, or in our oceans. We can help stop this by increasing investments in recycling to create a more effective circular economy. We can and must act now to address the plight of water poverty for billions of people and a plastics pollution pandemic that threatens the ecosystems of the planet that we all share. Water Unite's mission is to help ensure every person on the planet has access to clean water and safe sanitation in a world which is free from plastic pollution. Water Unite's simple voluntary micro-contribution of around 1 cent per liter of bottled water or alternative product sold provides an innovative funding solution to address these challenges. Through uniting retailers and brands, we believe we can achieve our mission within the next decade. The Water Unite model can be applied to any product. Using bottled water as an example, with the global market forecast to grow 20% to 576 billion liters by 2023, the micro-contribution of just 1 cent per liter can raise over $5 billion annually to drive meaningful global change. Addressing today's plastic pollution pandemic and the water poverty crisis cannot wait for another generation to take the initiative. With the backing of industry partners, Water Unite has already had measurable impact in helping to address water poverty and reduce plastics pollution, funding long-term programs to support plastics recycling schemes and the development of sustainable water and sanitation infrastructure. With your support, so much more is possible. By uniting around the simple and effective Water Unite micro-contribution, retailers and their partners are uniquely placed to make fundamental change, helping to ensure every person on the planet has access to clean water and safe sanitation, in a world where our oceans and those who depend on them are free from plastic pollution. There is a growing international consensus that we must act now. Partner with us today, so together we can change the world tomorrow.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar from Water Unite and Elior UK, entitled How Do You Turn 1p into 10p, the Power of Impact Investing. Ahead of tomorrow's UN World Earth Day, we'll demonstrate how to multiply your own CSR impact up to 10 times and promote sustainable business practices for the causes you care about. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Louis Goring-Morris and I'm the Partnerships Director at Water Unite. We're a global non-profit organisation which works with corporate partners to resolve issues of clean water and circular economy. And today it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers and also the agenda for this session. We've got 3 great speakers today, as well as 2 really interesting main sessions and a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, which will last around 55 minutes. So hopefully you'll have time to grab a coffee before your next call or meeting. Firstly, we'll have a welcome from Elior and Charlotte Wright. Charlotte is the Head of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability at Elior UK, which is part of the €6 billion French food service provider. Elior has partnered with us, Water Unite, since 2018, raising money through a micro contribution or donation for each bottle of water sold across its business. These micro contributions have enabled entrepreneurs across Africa and Asia to scale their social enterprises, creating greater positive and social and environmental impact. Then we'll have a session on how impact investing will multiply your CSR from Cyrille Antignac. Cyrille is the portfolio manager at Wellers Impact, a London-based FCA-regulated investment specialist. Wellers Impact manage the Water Unite Impact Fund, which is a collaboration with Water Unite, the non-profit, with Cyrille leading across the investment cycle from due diligence to exit, including post-investment monitoring and technical assistance to investees. The second session will be hearing from an entrepreneur, social enterprise on the ground with Keiran Smith. We're really excited to have Keiran here today. He's the CEO and co-founder of Mr. Green Africa, which is a Kenyan plastics pioneer and one of Water Unite's Impact's investees. Keiran is a serial entrepreneur with over 10 years experience in business building, and he has a background in banking and a Bachelor of Business Administration. Lastly, we'll have the live Q&A, so please do submit your questions in the Q&A section on the Zoom as we run through the webinar. We've also had a number of questions submitted in advance, so I'm looking forward to putting those to our panel today. Of course, if there's anything of particular interest to you and your business that comes up today, we're all more than happy to set up follow-up meetings as well. So just before I head over to Charlotte, we've just got a quick intro video to explain more about the partnership between Water Unite and Elior. This video features another one of our plastics programs, Genji Makers, so I'll just play that now. So hopefully that video has given you a bit of an intro into the Water Unite partnership with Elior UK. So I'm just going to hand over to Charlotte to give a bit of a welcome and intro and background from Elior. So thank you, Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for joining our webinar today, first of all. I know you're all extremely busy, and thank you for the introductions, Louis. So yes, my name is Charlotte Wright, and I am the Head of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability here at Elior. I'm not going to talk for too long, as I'm sure, like you, I'm most excited to hear from Cyrille and Keiran today. I'm so thrilled to have you join us. I'm really excited to hear from you. So I know we have a really diverse audience on the webinar. I know some of you know quite a bit about Elior, some of you know us quite well, but for others, this might be the first time that you're learning about us. So first of all, I'll just provide you a little bit about who we are. So Elior are a French-owned food service and hospitality business. We're actually the second largest contract caterer in France. And in the UK, we have around 1,300 contracted locations, ranging from restaurant spaces within offices to large scale events and day-to-day catering within stadiums. We also cater within the education sector from primaries all the way through to universities. Another of our markets is healthcare. This includes retirement lifestyle style villages, as well as more traditional settings and dementia care homes, for example. So you probably got the flavour. We have a really diverse client base, which demands a really talented, multi-skilled workforce. Like many businesses, we recognise that our people are our biggest asset, and that could not be more true for Elior. Contract catering is a really competitive industry, and now more than ever before, sustainability and corporate responsibility are at the very top of the agenda for our clients. And this includes an expectation that those teams that I've just talked about across our business will be acting on this topic. We launched our CSR strategy, the Positive Footprint Plan, many years ago in 2015. It's aligned to 5 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We're a signatory of the United Nations Global Compact, and we have our framework of priorities and our pillars for sustainability, our core CSR values. We have targets, we have our carbon reduction strategy, but what I'm noticing more and more is that these core pillars for CSR are no longer added value for our clients, and perhaps even, dare I say it, that interesting anymore. What we need to be delivering is innovation in sustainability, something different on top of our core targets. For example, we wanted to develop an interesting way to signpost low carbon menu choices. We're a food business, so that was a priority for us over the last couple of years, thinking about food and the impact that our food has. We achieved this through a loyalty program called EcoPoints. It works like a normal loyalty program, but instead of a free drink, once 10 points are collected, we plant a tree for our customer instead. And this concept won an innovation award last year. We're thrilled to be rolling this out across the business as we speak. Another priority I wanted to work on this year was around the culture of sustainability. So this is touching on, our workforce and our people being our biggest asset, sustainability really moving up there on the agenda. And as part of that, we were focusing on thought leadership, which is one of the reasons we decided to launch this webinar, actually. When we discussed thought leadership internally, we realised there was no one better from our list of partners to talk about ESG thought leadership than Water Unite and the innovators who benefit from their investment model. So you'll be shortly hearing a bit more about that from our other speakers. So let me introduce a bit more about the context of Elior's partnership with Water Unite. So you've already heard that our partnership began in 2019. And what it actually started with was myself and the purchasing team discussing the concept of ethical water. So that's water that has an ethical angle, such as donating money to charity. And there's some brilliant ethical brands out there. You may well know some brands, some that you've probably seen in the high street, and they're doing some really fantastic work. What we knew, thinking about our business, is that we needed to keep a diverse range of brands. Instead of choosing one ethical brand, for example, which was kind of the obvious thing to start to explore, could we just have one brand that has an ethical message? So to continue meeting the needs of our diverse range of clients and having that diverse range of brands, we needed to do something as a business collectively across all the brands that we sell. Now, selling bottled water, maybe it's obvious, but we have to address the elephant in the room, does have an ethical dilemma in itself in some ways. We know that if only everyone could just drink tap water, I know it's not that simple, but if they could, we'd be saving so much waste. But actually, water sales is growing, not just within Elior, beyond. We know that our customers still want convenience. And we need to remember that water is that healthy option versus other soft drinks. So to just simply remove those sales is not the right thing to do from a well-being perspective. Of course, continuing to work towards that reusable model is still a priority. But like I say, we have to acknowledge that selling bottled water is a core part of our business. As you can hopefully see, we're acknowledging that we sell water, but we had a real drive, we still do have a real drive to do good with these water sales. And just to mention, this applies to all grab and go water. So there's the obvious PET, plastic bottles, but we also sell cans of water in some locations. We've got a new supplier offering a reusable water, so it's a grab and go filled with water, but it can be reused over 1,000 times. And all of these items of water that we sell in our offer are all included. So it's trying to find that ethical arm to these sales, something good for the environment on top of supporting our clients with recycling and promoting reusable solutions. So back to kind of where we started, Water Unite contacted me actually at the perfect time. They must have known that we were exploring this ethical water arm and trying to have more impact. So as you've heard already, they use this micro levy model for their mission, and this was just the perfect solution for us. So I'm not going to steal Keiran's thunder. You will shortly hear how our donations are in fact doing so much good, the good that we wanted to see with the sales that we have in our business, and I couldn't be more proud of this partnership, and hopefully you'll shortly see why. So we launched in 2019. We're over 2 years in now. It's still one of the most interesting and impactful partnerships that we have. And just to reiterate, we make a donation for every single bottle or can that we sell across every site, across every division. So I mentioned before all the different catering environments that we operate in. So it's a central donation regardless of where that bottle or can ends up. You can imagine the volumes there. So I'm thrilled that we're donating thousands of pounds a year to Water Unite through this very simple model. I'd be happy to share more on our journey. I'd be happy to share more on the other work that we're doing, but we've got a bit of time for that in the Q&A. For now, I will hand over to Cyrille.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks, Louis, for the introduction. In the next 15 minutes, I would like to talk to you about impact investing and corporate social responsibility, and share some of the experience that we have developed over time. My name is Cyrille Antignac. My job is to run the Water Unite Impact Fund. I'm a partner as well at Wellers Impact, that is the regulated fund management entity that manages this fund. So we're going to be talking about impact investing in relation with corporate social responsibility, in order to understand if and how impact investing can add value to your corporate social responsibility, if it can brings a leverage and actually foster what you're trying to do within your CSR program. We'll begin with impact investing in a nutshell. From our perspective as investors, impact investing could be defined as an active financial engagement alongside ventures that work on putting together solutions to problems at the base of the social pyramid, as well as problems impacting the planet. And in our case, since we work on water and circular economy, three important problems we can highlight are things like access to clean drinking water or safe sanitation, the lack of which impacts a very large number of people on the planet still to this day, by the tune of 2.3 billion people, which is something like 31% of the global population. And if we look at access to clean drinking water, it is still a problem for something like at least 850 million people, according to UNICEF, which is also a very large fraction of the global population. And the two problems are actually underpinned by a larger issue of water stress that affects a growing number of people. That is about 27% of the global population. Again, the order of magnitude for that is 2 billion people. So these problems are still prevalent in large areas of the world, have failed to be addressed by traditional ODAs and classic models of multilateral support and classic utilities, but they are starting to be addressed more adequately by private companies. In fact, startup ventures with innovative business models. So we want to know, what is the difference between, and how can you see impact ventures from corporates? Really, I think the key difference is that they are 100% focused on solving problems of a nature, either environmental or social or both, right? And that's what we call intentionality in our language, i.e. an intentional business model where impacts and generating impacts is embedded into the strategy of these companies. In order to do so, they need to be innovation driven with a commercial proposition that is both inclusive and affordable for people to be able to reach these products and services. And in fact, addressing the bottom of the pyramid is a population that is largely left unaddressed by classic commercial models, such as those we see into, the BRICS with or developed economies, even with rather the urban middle class being the target market. These companies also focus on creating positive differences, with models that allow those impacts to be measured tangibly. And in order to be really impactful, they are, move away from just, focus on risk management of ESG to be delivering impact. So you can see that they are focused on the upside, where the delivery of impacts is the opposite of what you can see traditionally in ESG investing, where the performance of companies is seen as a negative screening, where primarily it is the avoidance of ESG risks. So if we look at the definition of impact investing, it's intended to create positive impacts beyond financial returns. So you need three things here. Essentially, you need intentionality, which is a strategy to solve these problems. These problems being felt by a large population, if we manage to solve them, it opens big markets. So essentially, there is a massive scalability in these, in addressing these markets. And it is not necessarily something that compromises on financial returns, because whilst these companies manage to open large markets, they're able to grow very fast. And by doing so, they remunerate the cost of investment for private equity investors, essentially like impact funds. So we have a few myths to bust here, which is that impact investing is akin to philanthropy or venture philanthropy. It is actually a real venture capital approach. Also, that there is a trade-off between returns, financials, and non-financial returns like social and environmental impacts. And increasingly, we see different generations of enterprises coming to impact and becoming impact ventures that are moving away from the first generation classic social enterprises as we know them, or we've known them since the beginning of the last decade. So the second question is really, what does it bring to corporate social responsibility if you articulate the two together, really? So in other words, what is the possible benefit for a corporate of incorporating impact investing into its CSR program? First of all, it shows tangible impacts to stakeholders, okay? Typically, corporate social responsibilities spend a lot of energy to try to include stakeholders, to address them with different actions they do. Impact investing is a good thing to incorporate into that, because it helps engage further with stakeholders, particularly clients, okay? And the typical needs that clients require is for products and services to be more transparent, more ethical, and fair trade sourcing. And doing all that is effectively a good antidote to any possible accusation of impact washing or greenwashing, because it brings things to the fore in a tangible manner. There's also a leverage involved with that, which is that any single donation helps having several impacts repeated, because every single dollar rotates, turns over several times, and can be delivering impact in a way that is repeated, away from the classic donation model. If the money goes into private companies able to generate returns and profit, they can repay either in the form of capital or debt. And for that reason, the money can be reused. So the same dollar can be used several times over to create multiple impacts. So there is a leverage associated to it. Second, bringing impact donation into, specifically here in the case of the Water Unite Fund, as essentially three different effects. One is it is catalytic, because there's an encouragement for private investors to tag along and join the donations in the form of the senior tranche. As you know, this fund is innovative in the form of what's called blended finance, i.e. mixing philanthropy and private funds together. The first part formed with the donations, and in our case, the corporate donation, provides a de-risking to private investors and a leverage for them to be encouraged to bring in private capital to at play that can be guaranteed by the first loss in the form of the donation. So it is catalytic to attract more private investment into impact investing into our portfolio. Second, there's a leverage, as I explained just before, because every single dollar donated, attracting more capital and being recycled has basically a multiplier effect. And three, there's additionality, because we focus on companies where there is a missing middle, where they need the sort of investors that we are to be able to raise enough money to scale. And that is a difficult source of capital to find from classic commercial bank channels and or classic investments. So we bring something additional to the market that helps this company become viable and scale further, which is again another multiplier effect. So what can be expected from it if you are a corporate engaged into impact investing? First of all, there is an active generation of impacts at grassroots level. So effectively, the money channeled through impact investing will help go on the ground into entrepreneurial ventures that actually address a large population with high growth, hopefully, and this allows these companies to scale faster and larger than classic grassroots nonprofit outfits. Second, as a corporation, you invest into innovation through impact investing, which is a contribution to the innovation at the front line of opening new markets at the base of the pyramid and or solving climate change and or environmentally related problems. So being a contributor to impact investing is good for corporations because it helps them understand how impact investing models can actually open new markets and solve a number of solutions while bringing commercial products and services to the fore. By the same token, it helps open new markets. And as a result of the impacts generated, there is a contribution to net zero and social targets in what we call the triple bottom line performance, i.e. financial returns associated with environmental and social returns. And that all together helps feed the ESG rating of corporations, as well as divert risk away from any possible accusations or hint of impact washing or greenwashing. So these are a number of benefits clustered together in the approach. I want to give you maybe a couple of examples of engagement of large corporations into impact investing. It's quite active and visible in the solar energy sector, where we have seen now several millions of people being provided solar home systems, which are individual systems to electrify households away from grids in regions of the world, typically in sub-Saharan Africa, where well in excess of 60% of the entire population lives off-grid. It's been very effective to bring electricity and really change their lives in a way they couldn't before with classic electrification. We've seen the rise of this sector since 2011 with M-KOPA in East Africa, and now it's spreading across Africa, and it's been spreading even further into Asia, where millions of people, so in the case of one of the leaders, Bbox, they had well over 300,000 systems deployed. It's all across a number of countries in Africa. And Bbox have been able to raise a significant amount of capital more recently with large corporations, all of which are being involved in the solar home systems or what's called energy access, namely Schneider Electric and Enchi or Mitsubishi, who all have a portfolio of investments in energy access. That is a way for them to understand and pivot into this emerging market where tangible impacts such as electricity at home for the first time for people who live on grid, real tangible quantitative and qualitative changes in their life, and also in aggregate a large carbon displacement. Another example perhaps in agriculture is Net Zero Ag. That is a venture that provides supply chain transparency for foods company, where you count with their partners, Mars Food, principally through the rice brand Uncle Ben's, Unilever, and others, involved in a direct relationship with smallholder farmers, something that wasn't possible in the old models where you had to work with large number of intermediaries, becomes now possible in a direct relationship through digital channels using blockchain technology and with large marketplaces to be able to aggregate transactions, create direct one-to-one channels between corporations and farmers to oversee their best agricultural practice, to have fair trade agreements, to have predictabilities of revenues for farmers, to have tokenization of transactions that helps liquidity for these farmers away from the classic feast famine model where they have liquidity just as 1 or 2 or 3 times in the year after crops. So we can see that the classic supply chain, as we know it from agriculture verticals, is actually moving away to something a lot more direct, enabling a direct relationship and enabling these corporations to actually deliver impacts on the ground, working in collaboration with smallholder farmers, delivering social revenues, social benefits to them, as well as safer agricultural practice, net zero. And I would like to finish with one of the investments that we have within our portfolio at the Water Unite Impact Fund. That is with a company called Gree Energy, that is a solution to treat wastewater. So what Gree does is help in agro-industrial companies treat wastewater in a different manner, where there is a massive additionality, because what Gree does is help these people avoid discharging wastewater directly into waterways, which is causing a huge rise in oxygen demand and eventually eutrophication of waterways. So they aim to displace something like 100,000 tons of VO2 per annum which is equivalent to the water pollution of 12 million people. That is what they're planning to do in 2025 after building the next 9 megawatt facility. Wastewater is captured, turned into biogas. Instead of being released in waterways, or instead of using your classic water treatment that is actually non-efficient from a greenhouse gas perspective, because a lot of methane emissions arise when water is left still in order for decantation, in order for in the classic water treatment. So as a result of a system like this, you have a lot of greenhouse gas emissions avoided, particularly methane. And in the case of GRI, it is something like 800,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per annum, which is equivalent to the emissions produced by 17,000 cars. And of course, biogas being produced, it helps produce clean energy that is going directly to the neighboring communities, some of which are off-grid. So there is a clear addition to not only green energy, but also connecting people, farmers with energy access. And this is the equivalent of 200 gigawatt hour produced with something like 400,000 people supplied with green electricity over the time. So I think it's too short to go any further, but I'll be very pleased to take any questions from you in the Q&A session later. In the meantime, I would like to introduce to Keiran Smith, who is the CEO and founder of Mr. Green Africa, also one of our investments. I'll let Keiran explain what they do at Mr. Green Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyrille, and thank you everybody for joining today. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for giving us the platform to tell more about Mr. Green Africa. So, of course, since we have some time constraints, I will try to keep it very brief and give you a good overview about how Mr. Green Africa started, what have we been able to achieve, where are we heading, and how does our activities link with impact investing, right? In a very practical example on the ground. So yeah, I'm CEO, I'm co-founder of Mr. Green Africa. And the way the idea started for Mr. Green in here in Kenya was really about understanding that plastic waste has value. So that's the first element, that back then, when nobody was talking about circular economy, nobody was talking about plastic waste as an issue around 2014 or early 2015, is when we realized that there is a lot of valuable waste streams lying around in Kenya, and there are already people who are collecting it to create a livelihood for themselves. However, when we started deep diving into this value chain, we realized the people who add the most value in this value chain, which is predominantly base of the pyramid folks, waste pickers, or a better term we might want to use is waste reclaimers. Those guys have been exploited the most because they have been exposed to volatile prices, to inconsistent payment terms and things like that. So the people who had the most value got the least, or always the short end of the stick. And so there was a huge social element and gap that we've seen in this value chain, very similar to the value chains that you see with smallholder farmers. And the second thing that we've observed is that the leakage into the environment, because of lacking waste collection systems and infrastructure within Kenya, most people burn the waste, and with it valuable waste. So we had a very huge environmental challenge, but also a social challenge. And the way we then came up with the idea for Mr. Green Africa is really creating a win-win-win situation. And that's when Cyrille talks about a triple bottom line business, I think we're a great example of that. And in principle, what we did is we've applied the fair trade principles that you would see in the banana, tea, coffee value chains, where smallholder farmers get included, get better working conditions, fair prices, transparent prices. We've applied that principle to the waste picker community, where waste pickers or waste reclaimers are farmers or smallholder farmers who harvest every day. And then the second thing that was very clear to us and what we realized is with many of these value chains, the high value addition and the manufacturing piece of it, or the value addition piece of it, mostly happens outside of the country of origin. And hence, again, the idea for us is how can we truly redistribute the value that we create is with local value addition and create highest possible value with the plastic waste that we would buy from the community and turn it into such a high quality that we can sell it back locally as a substitute to virgin material or virgin plastic that is usually being imported to produce packaging again. And that really was from day one, the core of Mr. Green Africa. And because there's so many different moving parts of aggregation and building an aggregation system that is fair, that is inclusive, building a value addition and business manufacturing piece that allows us to really convert this plastic waste into the highest possible value and find an offtake market again for it to bring it back into the local value chains. So sort of creating a localized circular economy. And in the past 5 years, Mr. Green Africa has been able to focus on these three main parts and been successfully able to validate the business case. And we're doing roughly 3,000 metric tons of plastic every year. It's hard to really understand, but it's around 12 Airbus A380s in terms of weight. So it's a significant amount that we can collect, process, and sell back into local industry every year. And one of our flagship products that we've been able to achieve and validate this model with is with our partner Unilever, that basically committed to buy 100% recycled material for one of their packaging products. And now we're in process of actually integrating more of our PCR back into their packaging. And with that, being able to do this now on a minimum viable industrial scale with 3,000 metric tons, we've been able to unlock additional funding through impact investors and value chain stakeholders to bring this now to the next level, where we're trying to do 20,000 metric tons annually in East Africa, where we're focusing on also replicating this model and various different parts of this model into other regions, and really creating a relevant, lasting impact from a social perspective and obviously from an environmental perspective. So this is really what we do as Mr. Green Africa. And I think to speaking to impact investment and social enterprise, where we are in as the business, we're really and literally in a transition phase as a sector. When we talk about impact investing, is we as a business, we're creating such a win-win in the nature of our business. If we don't create a win for the waste pickers and pay them better prices, we don't get access to the raw material, and the validation for us of being existence is not there anymore, right? So inherently, by doing business, we create social impact. However, when we look at the key performance indicators and things like that we track on a financial basis, on an operational basis, the key part in impact investing is tying that in as a triple bottom line also in terms of impact indicators, so that we can track just how we track revenue growth, we can track impact growth. And that's really where we are in the transition as a business to formalize and articulate the true impact that it comes out of as an upside rather than just as a risk mitigator. Yeah, so with that, I'm closing because of time, and I'm also obviously very open and keen to hear questions.
Great, thank you so much, Keiran. So we'll move into the Q&A section now. So if all the speakers can sort of put their cameras on and their mics on, and then I'll just hopefully get this set up. So firstly, from me, thank you so much for all of your insight and your thoughts and your presentations. The thing I find great about an event like this is that we have the sort of value chain of impact demonstrated. We've got a corporate that wanted to go further and do more work and be more socially conscious and push CSR and Elior. We've got the charities, Water Unite's role that works to facilitate that. We've got the sort of impact investing model that guarantees that There's more value from the donations, the leverage, the recycling, turning potentially 1p up into 10p, and then we got Keiran, who's really making change on the ground. So it's a pleasure from my side to listen to you all speak today. So we've had a few questions on the chat, and then we had a few questions ahead of time. So first question, actually, I might go to you, Cyrille, if that's all right. We've got a question coming in saying, thanks for the presentation. Can you share if there are any ESG related standards or water stewardship standards that the Water Unite Impact Fund used to signal to investors, i.e. some sort of credit rating, that the water project would deliver against an expected outcome? So, quite a specific question, but I guess it links more generally into, how are you working to record and report, the environmental impacts of the work at Water Unite Impact? Well, I think you're on mute, Cyrille.
Okay, works better with the mic. Yes, we have a number of KPIs for each of the investments we make. Typically, there's a scorecard that's put together by companies. Usually, it's in collaboration with investors. And in the case of the wastewater company, there are something like 3 sections with possibly 3 or 4 KPIs per section. So when it comes to clean water, the measurement is essentially 2 things: is wastewater treated in the form of biological, the indicator is called BOD5, which is biological oxygen demand in the water, okay, as removed and treated. And so it is measured in tons of BOD5 per year. It's measured using sampling of lab testing water, and that is the quantifiable indicator that the company uses to track how much wastewater they have been able to clean, i.e. remove from being discharged into the environment. And that corresponds to SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, number 6, specifically target 6.3.1 and 6.6. And there's also another set of SDG target 12, which is target 12.4.2. So that's how we quantify it, we measure it, and it is how we report it to our investors, essentially.
I think the question, and you highlighted the environmental impacts. What about the sort of social impacts? The people's lives that are being changed by being provided a fair wage, or by providing access to water or waste removed from their environment.
So that's the same. We measure everything, whether it's environmental or social. Usually when it's social indicators, it quantifies itself by number of people with access to XYZ services. For example, in solar home systems, I gave you earlier, this is basically number of people with access to. In our case, we have a measure of number of people with access to clean, safe sanitation and clean drinking water. And we measure that on a quarterly basis. And so there's an annual reporting, and we measure against a baseline in time. So baseline being when we start the investment into a company. So we can see the aggregation of impacts in number of people over time. Which is allowing us to measure the scalability of the impact that we invest into. Great.
And from my personal experience working with the likes of Elior, the likes of Co-op, we also work with the likes of Britvic. A lot of these metrics are very communicable into those impact reports, that the retailers are producing as well, and the food service companies. So yeah, thank you for that, Cyrille. We've got a couple of questions come in for you, Keiran. I'll just sort of read the top one off to get us started. So do you pay a premium price to the waste reclaimers compared to alternative purchasers? Do you provide them with training or protective gear? At what level of tons are you expecting them to achieve profitability? Plastic recycling is obviously very water intensive, so how do you manage water resources? There's a lot for you to go at there, but yeah, if you'd be able to sort of shine a bit of a light on that, that'd be brilliant.
Yes, so answer is yes, we pay premium. We're roughly 20 to 30% higher than the regular purchaser of plastic in the markets. And the main reason why we achieved that is because we are a fully integrated company. Yeah, there are many middlemen between waste pickers and the recycler, and we're doing the full scope of the value chain. So fully integrated, grassroots, decentral, through our buyback centers. And of course, there are a lot of more benefits that we provide to the pickers besides protective gear. And what we have established is something what we call a waste picker transformation journey, where we try to change the job waste picker, right? From a very, you can imagine it into different tiers, broken down in different tiers. Tier 1 is registered as a waste picker and in the Mr. Green Africa universe and benefiting from high price. That's tier 1. That's the base. And then tier 2 is you can transition into a loyalty program as an individual that allows you to ultimately improve your quality of life. Protective gear is one service that is part of it. But essentially, different pickers have different needs and different times. And with their sort of performance and their loyalty and frequency that they come to Mr. Green Africa, they unlock additional benefits as members of the universe that they can redeem against the loyalty points, loyalty products that are in the system. And all these products, they all lead to ultimately a better quality of life, right? So that's in terms of our contribution. And what was the last question that was in there?
The question about plastics recycling being very water intensive.
We roughly, in our process, we have roughly 70% rate of water recycling in our process. So the most extensive part of the water utilization that we have in our process, which is washing the materials or plastic waste into high quality flakes, that part has a closed loop system of water recycling, where we bring the same water back into the cycle. So that's at a rate of 70%. And of course, we're striving to improve that where we can, with systems like within the line, having closed loop systems within the line before they go into the main water treatment plant system. So and yeah, that it's a cost factor, of course, but it's more so an environmental element that we focus on. And with that, if we do that, we also win in terms of profitability. In terms of the scale we need for the profitability is around 15,000 metric tons a year. So, 5x capacity that we need to get from where we are today. And that we can achieve with the investments that we're about to do in the infrastructure that allows us to do the processing. Brilliant.
Thank you. Very, very comprehensive. And as I think I found in all of my contacts with Mr. Green, you thought of everything. You're always on top of these kind of issues. So it's great to hear of it. Charlotte, one for you. I know there's a few, number of corporates on the call today, and there's also some sort of internal, some of your colleagues from Elior as well. Could you sort of tell us a little bit more about how you've used the stories that come out of the Water Unite partnership and the stories that come out from entrepreneurs like Keiran in your messaging to consumers? So how do you communicate those stories to consumers and other stakeholders like your clients and also your internal staff as well?
Yeah, of course. Physically speaking, we developed some point of sale that could be displayed within our client sites when we launched the partnership at the very beginning. But yes, talking about more specifically the projects that benefit from the donations, that's where it's been just really interesting and inspiring, and that's been the story that we've really wanted to get in front of our clients and also our colleagues. We know that retention of colleagues now it is including kind of how do we share what do we stand for from a CSR perspective, and we know that our colleagues care more and more about that. So how have we shared that? Thinking about Genja makers, for example, there's been some really fantastic videos that we've been able to put in front of clients. Our operations teams always love to have some content that they can take to their operations meetings with their clients, and then within our internal comms. So it's it can be a difficult one to kind of really get the message out because everybody's so busy, and it's just about kind of keeping on layering. This webinar is another example of us trying to layer the message of what we're trying to do, but it's been really invaluable. And what I touched on at the beginning was how important it is that we innovate and share kind of the wider impact that we're having, and that's not going to stop. So we need to make sure that we're continuing to spread awareness. And I'm sure with your help, Louis, there's going to be many ways for us to explore that with more webinars, with some more material, more videos. But yeah, videos are really impactful.
Great. And, obviously I know that sustainability is really important to Elior, and it's key to what you do generally. But how do you see sustainability and sort of commercial success, interlinking? Because obviously, you're doing good business, which allows you to do good. But I think there's a bit of a shift where actually sustainability is becoming a bit of a commercial driver as well for organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so when we talk about that for contract catering, what always comes to mind immediately is around when we're bidding, when we're bidding to retain a contract or we're bidding to win a new contract. So, a few years ago, the weighting on sustainability and CSR was probably half what it is now, generally. Maybe some of our clients are maybe a little bit more progressed, and it could have been sort of 15% of what was important to them, but typically it'd be, kind of 5%-ish. We're looking at double, sometimes triple that now. So to have, again, as I said at the start, we can't just rely on our core values and those targets that we have around sustainable sourcing and reducing our carbon footprint. Obviously they are extremely important, but we have to have more, and without that, it's absolutely clear to us that we wouldn't be retaining our contracts and we wouldn't be winning new business either. So yes, very important commercially.
Great, thank you. So we've got a few minutes left, so I'll just quickly try and get around everyone again. Cyrille, just a quick one for you that we had come in before the call today was actually how can investors get involved in Water Unite Impact, on top of the current partnerships that you have? And actually, I guess I'll expand that to also corporates, playing that role as the catalytic capital, and investors playing that role of the, senior capital coming in over the top, being invested into companies like MGA. Can you tell us just a little bit about how people can get involved in that? You're on mute, Cyrille.
The fund has been able to talk to quite a number of private investors recently. They are drawn by the model in the sense that having the benefit of the first loss tranche is something very positive for them. They view the fund as very attractive, but also a rather high risk return. So if you pitch that into their investment portfolio, their sensitivity is that it is potentially to the more risky side of the business, because most of these investments are still relatively early stage, and we invest in business models that are also on a macro level early stage. So that's a risk being mitigated by the first loss is very helpful, and so we have been able to bid and overcome that barrier thanks to that, essentially. So really there is a strong positive behind the blended model.
Great. So I'm conscious of the time, so I don't think I'm going to be able to get any more questions through. But what I will say is that any questions that were put through on the Q&A or in the chat, we'll make sure to reach out and get back to you. A big thank you to everyone that attend. We had over 100 people register, which is great. It's great to see such an interest in these topics. They are so important. And thank you for the three speakers who've been brilliant and really insightful. Just to mention for anyone attending, you'll be provided with feedback questionnaire after the call. So any feedback would be brilliant for the next Water Unite and Elior webinar or any events going forward. So please do address that if you can. And there'll also be an on-demand version of this session. So for any of your colleagues that weren't able to attend, or if you want to catch up on anything again, please access that through the same link that you registered on, and you'll get an on-demand copy. And if anyone wants to reach out, I'll just quickly put our emails on the screen. So we're more than happy to have any follow-up calls or discussions. I can see a couple of things already bouncing back in the chat. And let us know, if you want to hear any more information, and if you want any of the slides like the ones that Cyrille presented today. But on that, I'm just going to say thank you so much to our speakers. Real pleasure, and thank you for everyone for attending. So it's been brilliant.
Welcome.
Thank you as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.